So, what was, what were the biggest kind of progression points that I can see in my so far pretty short career in running a business full time? Let's talk about that. Basically, a little bit of a background for my story if you're the first time listening, because I've kind of went over it in the last few videos. For 5 years, I've been like doing kind of online work stuff. Only for the last year, a bit more, um, I've been successful in actually running my own business full time and living off that. And for the most part, it was because all of this setup that was required for me gaining skills that were sellable enough for me to actually have like a service-based business. Service-based business is really cool in a way that all you really need is your own time, your own knowledge, and your own skills for in order to make money. Yeah, you're essentially a freelancer. I'm still essentially a freelancer, by the way. I call it a business because I'm kind of manifesting it to become like a full business and not just be, keep being just a freelancer. I digress. So, what's the main turning points in my development as a freelancer, soon to be like a business guy, when it comes to actually building up the leverage in my business for me to have more freedom, have more money, just progress, just grow in general. What do I mean by this? Let's start. So last year, 2025, the beginning of last year, I not false, actually sooner than that, I was already exploring the idea of using my skills as a service instead of selling the product because for a long time before, I was actually more focused on becoming like a e-commerce brand. I was building e-commerce stores and stuff. Then I got some skills in, ads and in building stores and building websites. I landed a job as a uh, junior marketing specialist. I soon left that job in like half a year after working there. And after leaving the job, I kind of, by the way, I was fired. Either way, it doesn't matter. After leaving that job, I kind of looked at, okay, at this point, I have some skills to sell, right? Because up to that point, it was all just like me building random stores. During that job, I actually got some skills. I didn't get, fired because it was really, really bad. I got fired because essentially I just didn't pay enough, effort. That's how I internalized it. Either way, but I got fired, and then was looking at, hey, maybe instead of trying to sell more products, let's just try and sell skills. Let's just try and graduate to a freelancer rather than trying to build another store because it obviously makes more sense. It's a way more direct path to money. So I started exploring that idea. At that time, I quickly realized that I really, even though I have some skills, even though I have some things that I could offer value of to other businesses, I realized that I lacked the skills to actually close deals. I lacked sales skills. So I took on a part-time job that allowed me to learn this, right? It was a part-time sales job. During that part-time sales job, which is now the last year, let's say, because I worked there for a year. So halfway through the beginning of last year, I started actually picking up some clients in the service I was at that time learning and loving, which was automation. I've been like a little bit of a no-code tool wizard for a while, and after landing that job, I started exploring my skills. I really, really realized that I love building automations, love building systems. Those AI tools at the time, I mean, no-code tools at the time like Make.com and NA10 helped bridge the gap between my skills and IT world, right? Because IT is pretty difficult, but I have an interest there even though I didn't end up committing to studying university where I was studying computer science. I have some slight knowledge of computer science basics, which kind of allowed me to really excel, I guess, in building out systems, and building out frameworks, and understanding how these no-code tools work in a higher level. As I learn more, at this point, I actually know enough of IT to do some light coding. Um, so yeah, it's a very interesting progression. And at that time, I was offering automation work essentially, and I was like sending out applications like crazy, like 10 applications a day, just cranking them out, getting my word out there, speaking to people, landing business. Right, halfway through, halfway through the year, at that point, at like the beginning of summer, a bit earlier, I already had some clients doing automation work. And at that point, it was a situation where I was so busy. I was just so busy I was doing the part-time sales job, which was really demanding. Sales is in general demanding. And then on my free time, I was also doing my automation work. And the thing about running your own kind of freelancing business or business, service business, when you're on your own, or if you're really small, with a few people, you have to wear a lot of hats, because business involves a lot of moving parts. It not only means to actually deliver the service, to actually like do the thing, like build the automation, build the website, build whatever, do the thing, right? Design the thing, draw the thing, whatever. It also requires you to look for clients, to do outreach, to find new work, find more business, convince people, make scopes, make project scopes, make proposals, close deals, make contracts, manage invoices, manage bookkeeping. A lot of things go into that. So at that point, I had some clients going, and it was like I was just completely cooked. I realized that both of these are taking a dip because I'm not focused. My sales job was, not performing that well because I was distracted by client work when I was, not at work. It was bleeding into my sales work hours and the vice versa, right? The stress behind the sales work was bleeding into my quality of work that I could do delivering the automation project. So yeah, I left the part-time job. So that was the first kind of turning point, just kind of focusing completely on that one business. Obviously, for different people, this comes to a different point. Some people like do it a different way. Some people have a bunch of savings and then they leave and they try and focus. I feel like both paths work. I've talked in the previous episode how you kind of need your back against the wall. You kind of need to burn the boats a lot of time for you to commit. This might be the case for a lot of people who are stuck in like a 9 to 5 job, and for them to commit fully to actually doing a thing, burning the boats by quitting the job to pursue your business, freelancing business, might be a good thing, as long as you don't be completely reckless. Depends on your stage of life too. If you're really young, honestly, I don't really see an issue with it because when you're young, your mistakes don't really cost much, do they? When you're older, that's when it gets costly. So while young, the risks are definitely worth taking. So yeah, in my case, it was a situation where I definitely went like a safe route, right? I had to put on a job. I was landing some clients, actually had some income when I left. So here I am, left. Now I am full time just doing a thing. So I'm sending proposals each day, 10 of them, doing sales calls, a lot of them. And at one point, I have enough business that it kind of takes up all my day. At this point, it's really, really hard to do both things at the same time. It's really, really hard to deliver all the projects you have lined up and still continue your outreach and try and get more clients. I feel like this is like a big gap when it comes to like online education and you're just looking up videos where people describe it as being simpler than it really is. And I also feel like it's partly depending on the person, but if you're a single man operation, it's so difficult to kind of have these two parts of your business where you have to do sales and you have to do outreach and you have to find business. You also have to deliver the thing. It's really difficult. So if you haven't started yet, that's like the main kind of thing. You have to really figure out a way to compartmentalize these things because they bleed into each other. Like the stress behind sales calls bleed into your ability to deliver the work, and the delivery of your work bleeds into the amount of time you can spend on outreach because your mental capacity gets really flooded really quick. But it's a stage where you kind of have to go through it, right? It's inevitable. It's a stage you have to hustle through. Another thing that came up in this stage was how I essentially had to, and if you're starting off, you will have to do this either way. It's like not something I could have skipped. I'm just kind of describing the progression that naturally happened. I think it's like pretty set on, regardless of what kind of business you pursue. The first batch was just work that I took regardless of what it was, right? It was anything associated with automation, anything kind of relevant to what I was doing. I just did the thing. And what ended up happening was me being just this jack of all trades guy who just did everything, right? There was a racing company where I made a content distribution for. There was a marketing agency where I made a cold email marketing systems for. There was a agency I created like CRMs for. There were systems I created for other businesses. Some of the systems I made, I delivered for multiple. Some systems are completely fresh for each client. As this kind of progressed naturally, some of the projects failed, some of them went well, some of them really, really well, some of them were just like flat lines, some of them got started and failed. A lot of things happen. Your capacities are completely filled. So it's a real like balancing act between like flood of either you sink or you feast or famine. That's the term I was looking for, feast or famine. Definitely a big kind of descriptive phrase for that phrase of my career, of my business, because essentially you have to go through this thing, right? You have to kind of figure out where you fit. You have to gain that experience of actually leading those projects, because nothing I could have done before could have prepared me for the things that I had to do to deliver those projects. I learned more in those few months, those 6 months of doing all this crazy stuff all over the place than I did creating my own kind of demos the whole time before, right? Because when I was still doing my part-time job, a lot of my time was spent just creating like demos, creating some example files, portfolio automations. And once you actually do the thing, completely different than what you expected. Another thing you learn is just what kind of projects you like working on, what kind of projects actually your skills are useful for. For example, at the beginning, I just didn't have a lot of knowledge about the business applications of the automations I thought I could build. For example, a lot of things, for example, if you look, hey, what's the easy automation to solve for businesses, right? If you ask ChatGPT, the first thing it's going to say is speed to lead. A lot of businesses are struggling that when people fill out their form, they're not contacted. That's not the truth at all. A lot of businesses are struggling maybe with like really robust CRM integrations, maybe because for most businesses, once they hit a point where they have enough of these incoming leads that they need to worry about speed to lead, is a point where they actually should have more bigger standardized approach. Like just simply slapping on a speed lead automation that's going to contact the clients, I'm not going to raise their bottom line enough. It's just not. Even though the studies show, even though blah 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 blah, it's just not valuable enough for the business to actually make the money. What they really need is an organization of their leads. So they probably need a proper CRM system, if which is likely more easily solved by existing products than you creating a fucking brand new thing from scratch. So there's a lot of these aspects going in where you have assumptions about what's going to work. For example, that automatic AI replies, which is complete BS because a simple CRM from the get-go offers this service. Right? So why would they hire you for like $1,000 if they can just hire and just get a CRM and do the same thing for like $60? Obviously, then they can hire you for the CRM setup. That's a different thing. But that's what I'm talking about, is figuring out what are the actual angles of business value that I can apply in order for my stuff that I make to actually be useful. Because at the beginning stage, a lot of stuff, a lot of automations I built were completely useless. And at the same time, I was just spreading all my efforts really thin between all these different projects because each one was different. Each one was for a different business type. Each one was for a different goal, different automation, for different, it's just all over the place. And this really stretches your focus, really makes it hard for your brain to kind of follow all these different projects. And remember, you still need to do outreach. So that period, I just remember how stressful it was, how hard it was, how often I had like 5 hour, 4 hour nights or didn't sleep at all just to get things done, just to wrap things up. And yeah, at the end of that year, at the end of last year, 2025, I had like this New Year's. I remember at the end of December, I had this recap. Me and my girlfriend went out to a cabin and we actually took out our notebooks and wrote down goals. And I had this recap from business. Hey, okay, I need to standardize the offer, right? I need to figure out a way where I can bring value to a business and kind of do this dilly dallying or just say yes to everything. I have to make a commitment to say yes to a very specific kind of job and say no to all this other crap. So what I decided then was that I really enjoyed also making websites, which was a few of the jobs that I made in 2025. So I decided that I would kind of integrate my knowledge of making websites on building funnels. So my whole offer going into 2026 was to build funnels. Yeah, specifically quiz funnels, right? That was my idea. So the next learning point that I kind of figured out at the beginning of the year was I was going around saying, hey, I build quiz funnels, I build quiz funnels, I build quiz funnels, but I still didn't define for what kind of business I build quiz funnels. And the quiz funnel concept was wide enough for me to still have the same issue. It was better, definitely. I think the improvement was that it was way better to actually sell. At the beginning, it was hard because people still know you as the automation guy. So people still kept reaching out to me, say, "Hey, I have this guy who needs like this automation. Can you help? Hey, I have this to need automation." So there still were these lingering kind of commitments from your past life, and I still have some automation clients that I maintain my systems for to this day, simply because I have an obligation, obviously, and they're paying. So it's like a bit of a not passive income, it still requires me to walk in from time to time, but it's obviously still useful. It kind of has a base income for me, so it's great. But yeah, at the same time, you have all these things coming in. And on the flip side, because my offer was just quiz funnels and I didn't properly define it, what ended up happening is that I landed a bunch of jobs on still different kind of businesses, and each kind of business needed a different thing from the funnel. So an e-commerce business was more like a traditional, lead funnel that can qualify leads, add some tags, add them to the email list. Then we had like businesses that make quiz funnels for that were real estate agency, for example. They have a different kind of need. They need actual leads that they can call right away instead of just an email list. An email list serves them nothing. Then we have like agencies that also made quiz funnels for the same thing. E-commerce websites or less e-commerce websites, more like big ticket item websites that were like e-commerce but needed leads as well. Didn't like sell directly. Also a different beast. So they didn't actually just need just a lead list. They needed the full funnel for them to actually convert to a lead list. The biggest thing I learned from this period was twofold. First of all, you have to be specific when you define your deliverables and define your niche if you really want to standardize. Okay. So you can still have this specific offer like doing push funnels and still fail in terms of standardization because it's vague enough for you to still fall into these pitfalls when you start creating funnels and creating systems that are different for each business. So it was still having the same issues where I was kind of not standardized enough that I couldn't really scale beyond those 3, 4 clients at the same time. I think the limit was like 3 because each of them was so different. And then at one point, I was like working myself really long hours, right? I talk about this all the time, like 12-hour days, and I was like just looking at my, let's say, average hourly rate, and it wasn't that high at all. It was like barely minimum wage, and I realized, oh wait, I'm like what I'm doing here, right? It's not really, I didn't really solve the problem I was looking to solve at the beginning of the year. And what happened was that I had these conversations with clients, tough conversations, where I actually had to evaluate what do they bring to the table. Are these relationships like actual profitable for me enough to maintain this business, to maintain these projects, to maintain these bills? And a lot of them had a smooth exit opportunity where I could actually go ahead and stop the project there. For example, do the handoff to the teams like, hey, you have that funnel, you have it built, it's collecting emails, but I just can't keep maintaining this project. I can't keep figuring out the next upgrade and maintaining it because I just don't have time and the contract value just isn't profitable for me. So yeah, I had to actually take these opportunities. I left a few clients that were paying me the most and or didn't just require that much time. A lot of my initial, uh, systems that I've built for a lot of them didn't actually require that time, daily time for me. It took like a few, focus sessions a month, and it paid me a base rate. So those are fine, right? Those paid me my like base salary. Then I had these relationships which I could later on build on to actually deliver and scale my service. One of them was a marketing agency, which after conversations we kind of established a relationship where instead of me building these funnels, I just scaled the offer down to building websites for service businesses. And that specific partnership turned out to be really fruitful because they had a bunch of clients that just needed new websites refreshed using the newest technology, using the newest cool automations and animations. And yeah, that ended up being really lucrative. That was the first kind of success in me standardizing the offer enough where I could actually scale it. All of a sudden, because the offer was so simple, websites for service businesses, I could actually have some templates and some processes and some workflows in place to allow me to scale the business, right? That allow me to have like a specific checklist of the things that I need to do for each business in order for the website to work. A specific onboarding process, a specific everything, right? Those were like the key takeaways where the business actually got specific enough and the outcomes that the business expects from the websites all were consistent enough for me to actually standardize. And all of a sudden, I could handle 6 projects at the same time, 7 projects at the same time. And in a span of a few months, I closed like 10 plus website deals and delivered them successfully. Finished those projects as well. So yeah, all that was the big unlock there. It was twofold. First of all, I found a outlet where I could subsidize, or I don't know what's the correct word, but basically employ this agency to be my outreach agent. You know, essentially, I sacrifice a big part of the margin, correct, but I don't have to use all of my time to do outreach on the side. For example, when I was doing the funnel deal, right, the funnel business, I had to do outreach at the same time when I was doing these different projects. So I had like 4, 5 different projects at the same time going on, all from different businesses, all slightly different, all their own niches, all their own like workflows, and the funnels all look different, the outcomes all look different, each had different kind of things. It was really hard to manage all of that and at the same time still keep up outreach, right? Still keep up output, still keep up cold emails, still keep up sales calls. Really difficult. So when I got the partnership where I was essentially a white label kind of developer, freelancer for this marketing agency, they took care of the project management, they took care of the outreach, they got the clients, and all I had to do was work on the websites. The gates opened up. All of a sudden, I could really scale up the outputs, and I could really dial in the offer, and I could really dial in the product development. The second thing that happened was obviously just dialing in that offer when I'm just offering websites for other businesses all day. They all look for leads, right? They all look for specific kind of outcomes. They all have either landing pages or like full websites. If they have full websites, they all look for the essential basics of SEO. And all of a sudden, I can kind of scale everything down and kind of put them into building blocks, which I'm going to try and make a video on, which are like the essential things a website really needs for it to actually function the way it needs to function, and allow me to kind of throw away all the fluff behind the offer. After that experience, now going further, definitely doing outreach and selling these websites to clients became easier because now I have so much experience doing it. I have all these systems in place to actually deliver. Then all of a sudden I have more time to do stuff like this, make videos, which are essentially hopefully can function in some kind of. I'm still figuring this video stuff out, which is something that I'm always interested, but never had time before. Now I have because I was able to standardize that offer. So yeah, that's the kind of so far the progression in about a year and a half in running a business. It's still not to the scale where I can really like throw my hands up and relax. It's bringing in on an average about a couple $1,000 a month, but that allows me to like work a lifestyle where I can travel and completely online, and it's enough where I can kind of sustain, just living from the business completely. And like I said, I have this really beautiful setup. Obviously, I'm taking some risk as well by doing this white label thing, but that's for a different thing. What I kind of want to highlight is the progression of standardization. At the beginning, definitely, you can't really skip this chaotic season where you have to take on everything because you have to get that experience on actually closing these deals. I could not have, even though it seems so simple in retrospect, there's no way for you to actually realize, actually learn, and actually get these skills and knowledge about standardizing that offer before you actually try and pull it off, before you actually build these things. For example, the same thing with the funnel thing. Well, I couldn't expect that I thought that these systems, automations, and everything, all these AI stuff are so beneficial for business, but actually start making them, you realize that businesses have different goals. And oftentimes, using AI to deliver a website is going to be way more beneficial than spending time to actually develop a system or an AI system for a business. So internally, right? There's also this interesting balance where at the beginning, where I was making these automations and AI systems, so much of my time was spent not only building these systems, but also teaching all these different kind of businesses how to use these systems, how to maintain these systems. I realized that it's not that simple as just building and handing off. There's so many aspects of it to be actually running all the time. And yeah, that's a big learning curve once you realize that, hey, maybe selling something that isn't that hard to maintain is way better than selling something that will require you to check up on the client all the time, because then you can have this lifetime contract, which I have with some of my clients, the early automation clients, which kind of, if you drop off from the face of the earth, they're going to have a hard time figuring out how it works. And at that point, is it really a system? What did the client really pay for, right? And at that point, if they're reliant on you to actually deliver the result, you might as well just cut out the middleman. You might as well cut out the system and just deliver the result. Because if you deliver the system, you're going to be judged on how often the system is functional. If you deliver the result, you're going to be judged on the result. If that makes sense. I digress. The idea is, yeah, like I said, it's a progression of you starting off in chaos. It just has to be that way. You have to start off doing everything. Then you have to kind of try and standardize the process, figure out a specific offer, lean down, lean down, lean down, try and outsource things that don't benefit you or that you're not really qualified for, either by hiring or by partnerships like I did. Different kind of aspects you can figure out is upskilling. In my funnel offer, one thing that stood out, if I kept going with the funnel offer, if I, for example, standardized to making quiz funnels for e-commerce brands, right? That could be like a good standardization because it has a specific outcome that they all will have, which is like sales. But a big chunk, a big problem there is that building a quiz funnel will build an email list, but then the email list actually needs to convert. So you're going to have to sell to businesses that actually have the infrastructure in place to actually do emails, do email marketing. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense for them to collect emails. Another mistake. And here I see an opportunity for upskilling. For example, if I upskill and learn email marketing, then all of a sudden my offer becomes more valuable. I still sell to e-commerce clients and I sell the quiz funnels, but if I upskill the email marketing after it, I can then connect directly to the cash and then directly kind of validate my value. Another example of this would be for the same website. Right? If I'm making websites for service businesses, I might upskill in something like SEO, and then all of a sudden, I'm not just building websites; I'm also building like SEO and geo SEO, which is a very valuable thing for businesses because it actually drives traffic, and that's actually a direct line to money. And then I can offer more value. But when you have this first initial phase of leaning down, then you can kind of go deep rather than wide. And yeah, that's basically the big takeaway. The takeaway is that you should be doing this, but then on the flip side, the other takeaway is that you can't really skip the beginning phases. Looking back, even if this knowledge was passed to me at the very beginning stage, like last year, I wouldn't have understood it. I would have just been paralyzed by the idea, and I probably would have gone the same path, only like differently. You can't skip the initial path of taking everything because you have to get those skills. You have to get that foothold in those connections and those relationships. A good example is that I would not have been able to figure out this white label agency business thing with the websites I'm doing right now if I did not have already the connections from the automation business I had at the beginning. Works hand in hand. So yeah, makes sense. But yeah, that's my story so far. There's going to be a day where I can describe these stories in a more fluent and easy to understand manner. Today's not the day, but yeah, I'll keep you posted on different